Well, good afternoon, Lake Norman, and welcome to Town Talk. We're coming to you live from WSIC, the Real Talk studio, nestled on the banks of beautiful Lake Norman, streaming worldwide from Naples, Italy to Utahville, South Carolina, population 237. I'm your host, Bill Russell, president of Lake Norman Chamber of Commerce, the largest chamber of commerce in the Charlotte region. Today, we're talking about energy production and the Lake Norman Kiwanis. My three guests today are Ed Pigott. He is the site vice president for McGuire Nuclear Station, Pat Jackson, who is the president and founder of Master Title, and Jeff Hammett, who's the owner of Hammett Insurance Agency. Before we do, I want to recognize Vicki Sawyer. Senator Vicki Sawyer was recognized by the North Carolina Chamber of Commerce. She was recognized as a job champion, and real proud of Vicki. She has a program here every Friday, 11 o'clock to 12 o'clock. We're just saying, and again, Vicki is an entrepreneur, small business owner, state senator, a member of the Lake Norman Chamber of Commerce, very involved, and want to congratulate Vicki. My producer, Bill's in the other room. Bill, we paid off the challenge at Angels and Sparrows yesterday. Ed, I was sitting here about 3 months ago, I guess, and Justin, the station owner, was out there talking about how baseball was very boring to him. I know you're a NASCAR fan. Are you a baseball fan as well?
I am. Yeah, Boston Red Sox fan for years.
Oh, I'm a Yankees guy.
Oh, I'm sorry. We're off to a rough start, Bill. We're off to a rough start. Can we bond around the Panthers, maybe?
Yeah. Well, I was listening to Justin talk about how he thought baseball was boring. So I went out there and challenged him to a batting competition at D-Bat, and with the loser having to wash dishes at Angels and Sparrows Community Kitchen. Okay. And Ed, I am a 28-year-old guy trapped in a 64-year-old body.
And did you wash a lot of dishes?
I washed a lot of dishes. And Bill, my producer, I thought you were going to be washing dishes with us too. You didn't show up yesterday.
I had to work, unfortunately.
I hear you. Yeah. Well, again, it was a great cause. I tell you, Bill, when you went out there and you saw the faces, Ed, we probably fed 150, 200 people at Angels and Sparrows yesterday. Richard, Justin, Ben, all from WSIC were there. They were performing too. They were out doing chores and things for Angels and Sparrows. But when you went out into the dining room and you saw the folks out there, it was awe-inspiring what they're able to achieve at Angels and Sparrows with the volunteers that they have.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've never been to Angels and Sparrows. My son and I do some volunteering up at Feed NC up in Mooresville, so I'm familiar with how good it feels to help out in that regard and see what folks can do.
Have you been to Feed NC since they built a new facility?
Yes, sir. It's beautiful. It's incredible. And the restaurant in the front is just amazing.
It's just gorgeous. Today we're talking about energy production. We're talking about McGuire Nuclear Station, but many people don't know that Lake Norman is the largest man-made lake here with 520 miles of shoreline, 32,500 acres. Bill, do you know who Lake Norman was actually named after?
Mr. Norman.
That's a good start.
That's pretty good. Norman Atwater Cock.
Correct.
Okay.
Norman Atwater Cock. And do you know what the deepest part of Lake Norman is?
Oh, wow. No, I don't. I don't even know how deep it is.
110 feet at its deepest. Averages 33.5. We're on 4 different counties: Mecklenburg, Iredell, Catawba, Lincoln, and so again, spread out. You probably know this, Ed. What is the invasive plant that is in Lake Norman?
When you guys get in there, I'm trying to think the invasive plant. Hydrilla.
Hydrilla, yeah. Hydrilla is something that you can manage it, but you can't actually eradicate it. So we have the grass-eating carp that takes care of that.
We do.
Up until 2016, you actually couldn't even swim in Lake Norman on our side in Mecklenburg County. You actually had to go to Duke Power State Park up in Troutman.
Just because of the amount of hydrilla?
Well, no, because, but the liability issues regarding Mecklenburg County didn't allow public swimming. But on May 24th, 2016, Ramsey Creek Park, we got a beachfront there. So now we actually have public swimming in Lake Norman. Big thanks to then Commissioner Karen Bentley, Commissioner Jim Puckett, and Elaine Powell, who were very instrumental in getting that done. I want to welcome our 2 Lake Norman Kiwanis members that finally showed up. If you want to put your headphones on and join us, Jeff Hammett is here. We also have Pat Jackson, and Ed Pigott, again, the site vice president of McGuire. Ed, I want to start with you.
Sure.
You were actually at sea as an engineering officer at Exxon Shipping Company and Arco Marine before you took got the job with Duke. Talk a little bit about that career.
Sure. Yeah, I went to a Merchant Marine Academy. It's not an actual military school. We wore uniforms and trained in that manner, but it is not for the military. It's for the commercial sector. And after graduation, I went to sea for initially Exxon Shipping Company and then ultimately Arco Marine. Super tankers, most of the time back and forth from Alaska to California, a few trips through the Panama Canal. Not a lot of time in port, a lot of time at sea, but then, you had vacations in between your times at sea. So you might do, 60, 100 days at sea, but then you'd be on vacation for a month or two, which I enjoyed that as a young man. It was a good early career. It's before I started my family.
Did you see yourself when you were sailing the seas one day operating and managing a nuclear power station?
No, sir, definitely not. Not something I would have foreseen. Yeah, no, I enjoyed going to sea. My wife also worked at sea and went to the same school. We met in college, and came ashore to start our family. And one of the options to come ashore in the area I was in at the time, just north of Boston, was a nuclear plant up there in New Hampshire. And so I came ashore with no vision of going into leadership. I was a non-licensed operator at the plant, fire response and turning valves when told by radio, and just never saw this future that this industry has provided me.
What kind of education do you have to get into that type of industry?
Many of our folks have an engineering background. A lot of military folks, and many with an engineering degree, both from the military and or from more more traditional universities. So high propensity for engineers, but we do have different specialists in other areas as well.
We're going to get into McGuire specifically, but we have several energy production plants here on Lake Norman. We have the Marshall Steam Station, Catawba, Cowens Ford here in Mecklenburg County. Talk a little bit about those particular plants and how they operate.
Sure. I mean, all centered around Lake Norman, as you mentioned. Lake Norman is really the source of the ability to generate power. It's what it was created for, actually. So Cowens Ford is a dam, and it's a hydro generating facility, about 350 megawatts. In 4 units, 4 turbines, water-driven turbines at Cowens Ford. And then they use those facilities to generate power and also to regulate flow in the river and work together in the entire Catawba watery basin system. But they also Cowens Ford Dam provides the reservoir, which serves as the cooling source for both McGuire, which is a 2-unit nuclear facility, and then Marshall Steam Station, which is a fossil fuel plant, but also uses the river as their cooling water source.
Well, we're going to go to a break in just a minute, but when we get back, I want to talk specifically about McGuire and what some of your responsibilities are. And again, I have Jeff Hammett with Hammett Insurance, and he's with the Kiwanis, and Pat Jackson with the Kiwanis, and we've got a Thanksgiving project coming up with the Kiwanis organization. We're going to have you two gentlemen talking about that as well. And I am sure that we can also get about and talk about your new responsibilities on the Chamber of Commerce board, Pat.
That'd be cool.
Pat's going to be joining our board of directors at the Lake Norman Chamber of Commerce starting in January, and he got his first program this coming Friday. We have our treat. For those of you who are with us, stay with us and come back to Town Talk on WSIC.
More Town Talk with Lake Norman Chamber President Bill Russell is coming up on the new 1059 100.7 WSIC.
Here is your WSIC community calendar. Santa is coming to town. Come out to Birkdale Village from 2 to 7 p.m. this Saturday, the 18th. WSIC will be broadcasting
Trying to make me
live
nervous,
from
huh?
the event.
Editing it out.
Activity Road, Birkdale on Ice,
For those of
beer
you who are
garden,
streaming on
dance
all of our
performances,
devices,
and the tree lighting parade. Dance
on
away the end of the night.
Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter, stay with us. Our two Kiwanis guys were just a little bit late getting in here, but they have joined us, and it's good to have them. And thank you very much, guys, for being here. We've got our Thanksgiving project coming up in just a minute. Earlier today, we had our nonprofit roundtable. Ed, once a quarter, the Chamber of Commerce, we schedule a nonprofit roundtable. We had about 25, 30 organizations get together, and we went around the room at Richard's Coffee Shop, Welcome Home Veterans. Are you familiar with Welcome Home Veterans up in Mooresville?
I've heard of them, yes, sir.
Well, we had a chance to kind of go around the room and explain a little bit about what we do as organizations and some of the philanthropies and gala events that are coming up in the next 90 days so we don't step on each other's toes. I'll tell you, we started that about 10 years ago when we actually had 3 invitations to 3 gala fundraising events in the same weekend with the organizations. And you just can't attend everything.
No, you can't.
So we began to go around talking about, what we do, because there was people like, they may have heard about Kiwanis, but they didn't know what Beds for Kids were. They may have heard about Lydia's Loft, but may not known all the services that Ada Jenkins provides. So it's a chance to go around and explain a little bit about what we do, how we do it, and then some of the events we might have coming up in the quarter. But that was today at Richard's Coffee Shop. And they also got an opportunity to go around the room and see some of the history, because it's not just a coffee shop, it's a historical museum. So if you hadn't had the opportunity yet, please go by Richard's Coffee Shop, Welcome Home Veterans, and see them. Did you do anything over the Veterans Day holiday, Pat?
No, we Kiwanis marched in the Huntersville Veterans Day Parade, so that was a lot of fun, and we had a good crowd there. They had a wonderful crowd in Huntersville for that, so that was fantastic. So, and if you have not been to Richard's Coffee Shop, that place is cool.
All right, I think we're going back live in about 10 seconds. So you are streaming with us. We're going back live on the radio in about 10 seconds. So stay with us on WSIC.
And Bill Russell on the new 105.9 100.7 WSIC.
Welcome back to Town Talk. I'm your host, Bill Russell. I'm here with Ed Pigott, the site vice president for McGuire Nuclear Station, Pat Jackson, president and founder of Master Title, and Jeff Hammett, the owner of Hammett Insurance Agents. Now we have everybody together again, so it's great having you all here. Ed, it's been an unusually dry year. I think all of our area lakes are below the targeted lake levels. Does having a low lake level affect anything in terms of energy production for Duke?
It does for Duke. It does not for McGuire Nuclear Station or Marshall. When we enter into some of the protocols associated with low lake level from low precipitation, there's a protocol that's invoked. Some of it's associated with some of the boat ramps need to close for safety reasons, but we also electively reduce some of the water throughput through the dams to preserve reservoir volume. So you would see less production potentially from Collins Ford. There are still water releases for flow that are done, but the pattern changes.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the responsibilities you have as a site manager for McGuire?
Wow. I have a great team. I have a plant manager that has reporting up under him all the folks that manage the day-to-day operation of both of our nuclear plants. And then also we have an engineering team that is involved in the design and monitoring and maintenance of our equipment. Our security team has reporting responsibilities in part to me as well. Very well-teamed, well-trained, well-experienced, a lot of them veterans in our security team as well. So really I'm responsible for the overall business planning and oversight of the safe operation of our 2 nuclear units.
Pat, you're a graduate of our Leadership Lake Norman program. What year was that?
I think it was 2005 or 2006.
So it's been a little while.
And that was a highlight, going over to there and having that tour. Everybody loved that one.
I was sharing before we came on, we did tours back then of McGuire. We haven't been able to do them since COVID, but we used to tour, and you went on one of the tours of McGuire.
That was so cool. We could hardly contain our enthusiasm. It was so clean. It was so pristine. That shocked me. So that was a lot of fun. I think that was the highlight for most of the attendees.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, our folks take a lot of pride in the condition of the plant.
We asked before you got in here some trivia about Lake Norman. Some of our listeners already heard this, but deepest point of the lake. Pat, do you remember?
Oh, I do not know deepest point. I can give you total square mileage.
Go ahead.
520 square miles.
Well, it's 520
shoreline,
miles of shoreline.
30 square miles.
32,500 acres. 110 feet is
110 feet deep.
110 feet is the deepest point of the lake.
That's
I would
not
never
on the
guess that.
tour.
And yet my boat has found many muddy rudders to dig into that, so I must have missed that.
Jeff, question of you. We asked a little while ago, listeners, lake was named after who?
That I don't know. I should know.
And of course, Bill said it was Mr. Norman, but go ahead, Pat.
Isn't it Bill Norman,
No.
Duke
no,
Power Chair?
No.
No, I don't know.
Norman Atwater Cock.
No, he was a president of Duke. You got that part right.
Right.
I think you were thinking of Bill Lee.
Billy was
I'm still
more
shocked.
recent.
I'm still shocked to see that roads that connect in one town go to another, like Torrance Creek. I think it's Torrance Creek that goes through, and I didn't know that came out near the point in Mooresville. I always knew like Betty's Ford Road was pretty much the main section of the lake, but I never knew other roads about it. So
Bob Cashin, who is now deceased, but Bob and Louise's house on Lake Norman up in Iredell County, the road literally that used to connect just went right beside his tennis court, but into the water, and it used to be the road that connected, and of course just went into the water. It was just fascinating. How many acres is McGuire?
Ooh. From memory, which is not always as good as it used to be, it's a little bit north of 700 acres.
Wow, that's a big
Now,
campus.
some of that is in Wildlife Preserve and other facilities across the street from the plant, across Route 73. But yeah, I want to say 760 acres, but I'll have to look it up on the break.
You know, we were just talking about COVID and the tours that we used to do, and I remember 9/11 when that occurred. We were up in Washington D.C., but some of the discussion was, oh my, we have a nuclear plant here. What safety procedures are taking place? I remember Duke actually showed a video of what would happen if a 747 actually slammed into that concrete structure, and it just pulverized the plane because the walls were so thick. Without getting into too much, what safety procedures does Duke take to make sure that we keep a safe environment over at McGuire?
Sure. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there from a security standpoint, and even from the operation of the plant. Everything's about layers and redundancy. We have multiple components that back each other up, 100% redundancy, and sometimes 3 and 4 times redundancy on the operating equipment. And then from a security standpoint, you touched on a key feature, which is the robust nature of the design, the containment building in particular. But then, as I mentioned earlier, we have highly trained security officers with a strong background, many of them from the military, that are part of that overall security posture for the station.
When we think about clean energy, most might think of solar, but actually nuclear is zero emissions. Can you speak to that?
Sure, I'd love to speak to that. Yeah, I mean, solar, wind are traditionally what folks go to when they talk about clean energy sources, and they are fantastic clean energy sources and a big part of Duke's portfolio and a growing part of Duke's portfolio. One thing with those, though, is intermittency. If the wind is low or not blowing due to weather, and of course at night or with clouds, solar can be reduced or not available. So you need to couple those with other sources. You could store that energy, and storage is part of Duke's plans, and there is some existing storage. But baseload nuclear units provide the constancy, the continuous generation. And then if you can couple that with storage, then you can use intermittent assets like wind and solar. And when they're not there, you can either withdraw from storage or, part of our future plans involve new nuclear units. And they would also be able to fill in those gaps in between the renewables. So you really need multiple different sources. There is no one technology, in my opinion. There is no one technology that would be the solution to all things. But the zero emissions piece of nuclear, from a carbon emission standpoint, we do not release any CO2 to the environment. It is a unique advantage of how we're able to generate. About 50% of Duke's total energy comes from nuclear.
I think we opened the plant in 1981. It was licensed for 20 years.
Correct.
Then there was a relicensing for another 20 years, and so is it 2041.
It was 40 years initially, and then we relicensed for 20. And
Okay.
the licenses are based on the individual units. So Unit 1, exactly as you described, 1981 became commercial and started the 40-year clock. So we just went through and celebrated with the community the 40-year anniversary of Unit 1 just 2 years ago. And next year will be the 40-year anniversary of Unit 2. So initially licensed for 40 years each. We were able to obtain a 20-year license extension on each of the units. So they're both licensed to 60 years. And this is true across the Duke fleet. We've extended the licenses of each of our units an additional 20 years. And there's a process called SLR, Subsequent License Renewal, that Duke is engaged in for all of our units. And we're seeking the ability to extend an additional 20 years. So I would expect McGuire to be part of the community fabric for a total of 80 years.
So the life expectancy of a power plant could be 80 years?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
As more people move into the region, how is Duke going to handle our electric demands?
It's a good question. The growth around here is incredible, and certainly when the McGuire Nuclear Station was first built, this community looked a lot different. There's been enormous growth over the years. You may be familiar with the Carolinas Resource Plan. It is an integrated resource plan that Duke Energy filed with the Public Utilities Commission in the states of North and South Carolina. That plan is built to look at the postulated growth or the predicted growth in our areas around Charlotte and really the entire Carolinas. It looks at the growth in residential homes. It also looks at the expected commercial growth. You see some of these data centers and other large energy consumers coming into the area. So we look at that growth and essentially need to build to match that growth. We provided the infrastructure, the service that is electrical power. So that integrated resource plan has, it's a little bit of what I described a little while ago, an all of the above approach. It has a solar and wind component within it. It has a storage component within it. It also has new nuclear as part of that plan. But before I talk about new nuclear, a huge part of it is that subsequent license renewal you already inquired about. An additional 20 years of each of our 11 reactors across the Carolinas on 6 sites is a big part of that solution. So, today we safely operate 11 units. We want to extend that into tomorrow with an additional 20 years through subsequent license renewal. And then behind that, you see the construction of new nuclear, along with the build out of other assets, other types of generation to meet that demand.
And I was going to ask about that. I'm a Rock Hill guy I grew up and was born in Rock Hill, and I was down there when we built Catawba Nuclear Station, which had I think it's 2 reactors.
It does. Yeah, very similar to McGuire.
When did they open? About in the 80s, right?
Yeah, a few years after McGuire, from memory, which I think it was 83 and 85 for Catawba.
So we have 11 nuclear plants within the Duke chain?
That's correct, on 6 sites.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So McGuire is 2 of those 11.
And are the nuclear just in North and South Carolina?
For Duke, yes, sir.
Yes, okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Well, when we get back, we're going to continue to talk about Duke, but we also want to talk about the Kiwanis, because we've got a Thanksgiving project coming up, and you guys are going to be handling that. So when we get back, we're going to talk to the Kiwanis about the Thanksgiving project. So those of you who are listening to us on radio, please come back to Town Talk on WSIC, and we'll be right back. So did you remember some of your Lake Norman trivia from Leadership Lake Norman?
Generally speaking, but I pay attention. And Ed, thank you for our power, and thank you for keeping us safe.
Oh, glad to be part
This
of it.
is
Glad to
very
serve.
informative. I'm a long-time listener, first-time visitor. So
Okay.
to the show.
We are streaming live on Facebook, on YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter. I'm still trying to get used to the whole Twitter X thing.
That's a little daunting. All
Still
those
Twitter to me.
sources.
Yeah, it's still Twitter. I'm sending out tweets and not X's, but it's good to have you guys here. Ed, I was telling you a little while ago, these guys are involved in Kiwanis, but I'm in Kiwanis as well. Joined the Kiwanis in 2001. I was president of the Kiwanis in 2006, so I've been there for a little while. We were going to be scheduling Ted Budd, United States Senator Ted Budd, on a Focus Friday this coming Friday. Unfortunately, with everything going on, I don't think it had anything to do with the Bernie Sanders the thing yesterday. But Ted's not going to be able to join us on Friday after all, so we're going to have to kick that down the road. But we had Congressman Dan Bishop on the last Focus Friday, which was a really great program. And that's on YouTube. So for those of you who are interested, you can see a little bit of what Dan had to say about what's going on in Washington, D.C. And Pat, you're joining the board of directors tomorrow. Are you going to be able to join us on Friday?
I'll be there on Friday. I'm very excited. Business, public safety, quality of life, it's so important in Lake Norman. And I'm happy to do my part, and I really want to get involved.
You were talking about leadership Lake Norman. For those of you who may be unfamiliar, can you share a little bit about what your leadership experience was like?
It was an immediate connection to the community. We got to visit public safety again, which is near and dear to my heart. We got to see the utilities. The hospital was wonderful. I believe Novan had just opened up, and we got just a behind-the-scenes tour, which was wonderful. The people were fantastic. I'm still friends with many of them, including Tim Stein of Maestro Travel, a big Lake Norman Chamber supporter. Still good friends with a lot of them. And those people are just still involved in the community, and I think that's the very cool part.
Sounds like an amazing experience.
Yeah, it was fun. Every Thursday for about 10 months, right, Bill?
Well, it wasn't quite 10 months.
Once a month on a Thursday.
May seem like it. We actually, in addition to having the adult program, which has about 24 people going through a program for about 8 months, we have a junior leadership Lake Norman that started off about 12 years ago, I think, and it's they go through many of the same things that the adults go through, but it's a really good program that we put on. They look at not only the community infrastructure with Touring Duke, but they'll hear from Energy United. Electric Cities, that we will go to the water treatment plant, the wastewater treatment plant. We'll have a program on government crime law, so they'll go out and hear from them. Healthcare, history, a lot of different things. For those of you streaming, stay with us. We're going back live on the radio in about 15 seconds, and thank you for being on Town Talk today.
Morning on Good Morning LKN, starting December 7th through December 22nd.
It's Town Talk with Lake Norman Chamber President Bill Russell on the new 105.9 100.7 WSIC.
Welcome back to Town Talk. I'm your host, Bill Russell. We have Ed Pigott, who is the site vice president for McGuire Nuclear Station. Pat Jackson with master title. He is the president and founder. Jeff Hammett, the owner of Hammett Insurance Agency. Gentlemen, all three of us are in Kiwanis, but for people who may not be familiar with Kiwanis, Jeff, what is the Kiwanis organization?
So Kiwanis is a global organization. Our main focus is helping children. And since we're an international club, our focus is the Lake Norman area. So that's pretty much in a nutshell. We have SLPs, which is called Student Leadership Programs, which is essentially everybody's heard of Key Clubs. We sponsor 7 Key Clubs in the area. We have 2 Builders Club, which is the middle school version of the Key Club, and we have Terrific Kids at 2 elementary schools. So you've probably seen the bumper stickers around town for that.
Pat, where's the Kiwanis meet?
We meet each Thursday. I got that right this time. Brooklyn South, 12 noon, the best pizza in Lake Norman. We have 39 members, virtually all of them super active and super involved and pretty opinionated as well. So we have a lot of fun. Please, your first lunch is on us. Come on down any Thursday, and we'll have a speaker. We'll have some fun. We'll talk about things going around the town.
How
It's
does
down in the banquet room. A lot of people get
In the
confused.
back room,
Yes.
how does someone join the Kiwanis?
Pretty easy. Just like most nonprofits, you you fill out an application, you're in for the most part. But it's what attracted me years ago. I think when you were first becoming president is the variety and the energy the group brought. I'd visited some other groups, and that's the one I felt like more at home. And I knew I was moving to Huntersville from Concord. I was like, this is a group that I want to be a part of. I like what they do. I grew up in my high school, we had Leo Club, which is part of the Lions Club. And so the Kiwanis attracted me. And so I've been with them for pretty much 18 years.
What's the cost to join, Pat?
The cost is $150. It is prorated for your first year. Some of that goes to the international and national funds. It is all well used. We take our fidelity with your money very, very seriously, and we'll talk more about that with the funds we're raising for the Thanksgiving meals. So
I'm sure there's a website that promotes Kiwanis.
there is lknkiwanis.org. Is that correct, Jeff?
I think so.
Our Facebook page is
It's
very,
the more
very
active. Facebook and Instagram.
And well, the reason you're here today, we've got a big project coming up on Kiwanis, a Thanksgiving project. Can you explain about what we're going to be doing with the Kiwanis?
Sure. So for 26 years, Lake Norman Kiwanis has been feeding families in need in the Lake Norman area. And we didn't realize the history until, a couple weeks ago, that it went back 26 years. And we started with 20 families. And we actually, Bill, you probably remember, physically delivering the Thanksgiving dinners to the families at their homes. We don't quite do that anymore. We've partnered with the Huntersville Food Pantry, which is located right behind the United Methodist Church off of Stumptown Road. And that has been our source for families of need when I took over the project 8 years ago. It's since expanded. The year after COVID, I remember going back to Paula, who runs that program, and I was like, all right, we're ready. We've got a goal, I think this year, 250 families. And she came back and was like, we don't have a need for 250 families this year. And so that was shocking.
Yeah.
And then one of our members was like, we have these key clubs that we sponsor, and we've been wanting to get more involved with them to get them interacted. Why aren't we reaching out to the schools there? And I was like, fantastic idea. So we reached out to their school, to their social workers, and started providing meals at the schools. And this kind of expanded. This year, I think we're doing 14 different charities we're helping out. If you count the five high schools, 2 middle schools, 2 elementaries, and then food pantry, neighborhood.
Sparrows, we do a little bit with. Ada Jenkins this year.
No, Ada Jenkins this year.
Neighborhood Care Center.
Yeah, in Cornelius.
Manny and David Meacham over there. So, yeah, the need is great, and we're still getting requests to provide more meals. So we'll have to talk about it after we're done, Jeff.
What's the greatest need that the Kiwanis need right now? What's your greatest need, particularly on this project?
We need funds. We do this outside of budget. We throw in money from the Kiwanis funds, of course. The members themselves provide, but this is really community-based.
Yeah.
We are shocked on the response of this. This will cost us over $18,000 in the course of a month. It's really important to remember one key partner in this, and that is Publix Supermarket in Rosedale.
Right.
They work with us. We just lost our wonderful manager, Carlos.
Yeah, he got promoted.
He got promoted. But think about this. This was so important to him that he left a file. He left all the prices and everything he did for the new manager. So we're in pretty good shape there. So So we need funds. We're close to our goal, but we're not quite there.
Correct. Don't know the final numbers right now, but $18,000 is our goal because it's roughly $45. Actually, Robert, the new manager, told me it's $46 and change. So right around $45 to feed one family. And I just go over what we put in this box. It's actually a banana box, and that's a challenge enough for the manager at Publix to collect 400 banana boxes. Because where do you store that?
400.
So if you were to drive behind Publix right now, you'd see them in the back, and there's a tarp covering them up right now. Last year they had a extra trailer, but it's a 14 to 16 pound turkey this year, and homemade pie, green beans, corn, yams, gravy, stuffing, dinner rolls, and some type of canned fruit. And I think last year we threw in some mashed potatoes.
That's a great meal.
So it feeds 4 to 5 members of a family. So the impact is this year is anywhere between 1,500 to 2,000 people that we're going to feed.
2,000 people that Lake Norman Kiwanis is taking care of.
Mm-hmm.
That's phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
But the biggest thing is we're just the ones driving the project. It's our community. It's amazing. And when we started rolling out the digital money like Venmo and PayPal, that opened up a whole new avenue because people were willing to give $2, $5, $10. And I would say that's probably our largest contributions are the small varieties throughout the way. That, and everybody likes to say, I want to sponsor a family. How much is that? So now we'll take the $1,000 check if someone wants to hand it, but most people are, like I said, it's going to be the $20, $25 range the whole time. And it comes in. So
This is a passion for Jeff Hammett. He has taken this over. I believe it's about 9 years now that you've
8th year,
led,
yes.
8 years. We all kind of put it together in the past, and it's so funny for you to ask us about Kiwanis. Bill, I remember when I first joined, you were one of the younger members of Kiwanis. So
I helped that out.
Yes, you brought down our average age, but Jeff has taken this to new levels. He recruits. We just had a wonderful event at D9 Brewery over the weekend, and we had a lot of fun with that. We had live music. D9 threw us a ton of money from their proceeds. A lot of neighbors came out. It was a blast. So, you know, this is a passion for me as well. But my hat is off to Jeff for what he's done with this.
Well, thank you.
He keeps throwing the bar higher and higher.
Yeah, every year, once we achieve the goal, and then once the dust settles after the holidays, the newest president, because in Kiwanis the president starts October, so they're thrown into the fire right at the beginning for all these activities with the Thanksgiving dinner project, and then Christmas in Davison, and you name it. It just seems like it's endless right there, all up front. The golf tournament we have is towards the end, so it's kind of like the new president's filling that a little bit.
Pat, I don't think I told you next Wednesday's show we have John Anarella, former president of our club, former lieutenant governor of the club, but he's going to be on there as well as Steve McElwain, and we're going to be talking about the Kiwanis Action Program. And for those who may be unfamiliar with the Action Program, it is young people 18 years of age but older with special needs. And I was sharing this morning at our nonprofit roundtable. If you were trying to go southbound on I-77 this morning and we're not using the toll lanes, you were met with frustration because it was a parking lot. And oftentimes we get into the congestion of the area because we're a growing community. And you could be very frustrated and nerves fried a little bit and saying, what kind of day did I have? And then you go to this meeting with these young adults that probably have every reason in the world not to be happy with what's going on in their life. But they are laughing and cutting up and so happy to be there. Pat came out about 3 months ago and he said, I want to take care of supper. So he's out there, he's flipping hot dogs and hamburgers for the Action Club members, and he's working over a grill. It was hot that day, but Pat's out there flipping those burgers. Actually, it was hot dogs, wasn't it? It was
hot dogs.
Hot dogs.
We were throwing cornhole, and let me tell you, these guys can talk trash. Oh my God! And I think we will have our Christmas dinner with them shortly. Right?
We each year we have a program at Mount Zion Church, and we have the Kiwanis hosting the Action Club. And yes, that's going to be I think it's on the 15th that's taking place. But getting those young people together, they just have a great time. We'll talk a little bit about that when we come back. We're going to go to a break in just a little while to allow our sponsors to get some information in. So those of you who are listening on the radio, come back. We're going to talk with Ed Pigott. He's the site vice president for McGuire Nuclear Station. And Jeff, I think you've got to leave, but Pat Jackson's going to stay here. So stay with us on Town Talk on WSIC. We'll be right back.
Thank you so much. This was fun.
Okay, for those of you who are streaming, Jeff's going to leave us because he's got to go pick up, I think, his daughter.
She's got soccer over in Forest City.
Okay, but so we're going to lose Jeff Hammett, but we're going to keep Pat Jackson. Pat, we were talking about the Action Club. Share with people who are on our streaming platform on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. What is your favorite experience with our Action Club?
Oh, I mentioned it. It's the Christmas party. Not only the kids, the guys. It's supposed to be kids, Ed, but these are gentlemen now. These in 30s and 40s and maybe
And
one or
women.
two. Yeah, and women
and
and
women.
ladies. That Christmas event will stop you in your tracks. The prayer. Now it's important to point out that Bill handles the monthly meetings for these guys and girls each month. Last Friday of each month, of which I believe, are you doing? Oh, you're ahead of the game this year in terms of with Thanksgiving coming up, right?
Well, we were going to be having a meeting at the chamber a week earlier tomorrow night. Friday night. But instead, it's going to be a virtual meeting. But we meet on the fourth Friday of every month, 7 o'clock.
But that Christmas event, it's usually catered by Brooklyn South or one of the other restaurants. We arrange for that. We pay for that. The parents come. They bring the desserts and the prayer. The prayer can go on for several minutes. They have a lot of things to cover, and it's really wonderful.
How did you get involved in Kiwanis? I don't remember.
I don't remember either. I like Jeff, I was searching. I wanted a place. Years ago when I joined, it was a 7:30 a.m. breakfast meeting, so that was helpful to me to get out and about early. So I struggle a little bit with the lunch meetings, but I try and make it when I can. So.
Ed, we're going to talk about Duke's involvement in the community, but have you been involved in any civic organizations?
Yes, sir. Yeah. So for much of my time when I was up north, I was a volunteer firefighter for 15 years. So
Really?
I lean into that a little bit in the area here in terms of donating and following those organizations. But we mentioned earlier some involvement with Feed NC is a location where my family likes to
And you
volunteer.
said you and your son worked at Feed NC,
Yes, sir.
volunteered there.
Yes, sir.
What'd you do?
We received loads of food, mostly donated food, and then we would sort through the produce and the different types of food, sort them out into categories and discard the items that weren't safe to put out front. Many of those would go to farms and the like in the area to be reused. Everything got repurposed. So
And
it
how
was a
old is
food
your
store.
son?
I have two boys. One is 24 and the other's 22. And the 22-year-old and I were the ones up at Feed NC.
Well, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Pat, we're going to go back live in about 5 seconds, so we're going to come back to you. And those of you who are streaming, stay with us.
WSIC.
Well, good afternoon and welcome back to Town Talk. I'm your host, Bill Russell. We have Ed Pigott. He's the site vice president of McGuire Nuclear Station. And Jeff Hammett had to leave us, but we have Pat Jackson. He's the president and founder of Master Title. Pat, let's talk about your business. What is Master Title?
We are a full-service title agency. We write title insurance on all commercial and residential real estate transactions. We've been in business since 2002. I am partners with the Allen Tate Company, and we've had a wonderful run. We've got 14 employees, and we work with the local closing attorneys to secure title insurance for buyers and lenders when they close on real estate deals. And as you know, real estate has been a huge component of this economy here in Lake Norman. So, it's been quite a run. We're having some challenges now with the interest rate environment, but we are all pretty confident that once we get through some of this in the next few months, maybe a year or so, we're going to go on another wonderful run here in Lake Norman.
Slowing down a little bit, but most of that has to do with product, probably.
Oh, inventory is challenging. Inventory is challenging. So, we're in a unique market, and it's hard to figure out. But things will spread out from Huntersville and Cornelius and go a little wider in the area. So we'll find some product.
Ed, going back to Duke,
Sure.
Lynn Good, who's your CEO, she said she's focused on Duke Energy executing an aggressive clean energy strategy, at least 50% carbon reduction by 2030, 80% by 2040, and net zero by 2050 electricity generation. How do you get to net zero by 2050?
Great question. So, net zero itself, the concept is the total math, the product of what you produce adds to zero carbon. So some of that can be in offsets, tree planting and different other things that are offset the carbon that's released. But in general, the way you get there is you reduce the amount of carbon you emit. So certainly the renewables portfolio that we talked about earlier would be a big part of that growth in solar and wind and storage. We have our lake systems, like the Catawba Watery system here with Lake Norman for hydro generation. And then nuclear power. We talked about nuclear's role now. One of the unique things about nuclear is we're online 95% of the time, which is, we referenced intermittency earlier with solar and wind. They don't produce 95% of the time based on changes in weather and the like. And other forms of generation are also quite reliable, but 95%, and 93, 95% online with a carbon-free source is part of how you reduce your carbon numbers. So extending the licenses of our 11 units is a big part of how we get to those goals. Retirement of some fossil emitting units is certainly part of that, and replacing those with new generation. Some of that new generation could come from things like upgrading the capacity of some of our existing facilities. In fact, McGuire and Catawba are both in a review of the feasibility of finding some efficiencies in the secondary side of our plant and modernizing equipment that would allow us to produce more than we currently produce. In addition to that, we're looking at the construction of new nuclear plants to help meet our net zero goal in 2050.
Do any local plants that we're talking about, or has it been mapped out?
Obviously the expansion of capability at McGuire and Catawba is local.
Okay.
Duke has announced plans at the Blues Creek site to the north, up near Winston-Salem, north of Winston-Salem, for a potential new nuclear facility at that location. In general, one of the things we would consider is the existing infrastructure. So if you have a plant in place, say a fossil plant in place that's going to retire, you tend to have the transmission in place. You have a water source like a river or a basin like Lake Norman. But what you also have is a skilled workforce that's been in the power industry for a long time, knows the unique nature of the business that we do and how we serve our communities, that you can immediately take advantage of. So some of our considerations of locations would look towards existing infrastructure like that.
Ed, we just had the Kiwanis on. We had Jeff and Pat, myself, talking about civic involvement. Duke Energy is extremely involved in our community. Talk about some of the things that you do in the community. Your job is to produce power.
It is.
But yet you're out there, you're involved in the community, sponsoring certain things that are advantageous to our community. Speak about your community involvement.
I would love to, and I was very impressed with the Kiwanis discussion and very humbled by what you all accomplish. It was fun to hear. The act of producing power is a service. We believe greatly as Duke Energy in serving our community, and we do in that capacity. But similar to what you're talking about, for McGuire, for over 18 years, we do a Toys for Tots drive. When I climbed in my car to come meet with you, I was parked next to the tent where we bring in all the bicycles and all the different things that our employees donate, and the different shifts and security, and everybody has their own programs, and we fill a tent. And it's one of the highlights of my year is meeting with the Marines and local law enforcement folks who come and do that pickup each year. So 18 years with that. There's a former McGuire employee who started, I'll have to look at my notes, I think it's 35 years ago, a winter coat drive. So there's a bin right outside my office in the lobby at McGuire where folks bring in, lightly used or new winter gear, and we're able to donate that for 35 years. Duke has a program called the Power of Giving that essentially empowers.
The Power of Giving, that's
Yes,
good.
Yeah, it is. It empowers our employees to give to the charity of their choice. They can give of their time, which many employees do. They can give of funds and fundraise for it, and then the company has a matching program that allows you to, in some cases, double your contributions to the charity of your choice. So through that, the amount of money that's brought to the community is just enormous. So it's a core value for Duke Energy.
And the symphony.
Oh yeah. Yep, the symphony's a great one. I'd love to talk about that.
Well,
yes.
please.
So over 20 years now, it was interesting because we took a pause on the symphony during COVID.
Oh, yeah.
And so the 20-year anniversary would have been during COVID. So when we brought the Charlotte Symphony back, we called it the 20th time we were doing it, the 20th anniversary, but it would have been the 22nd year. Great event. The symphony's fantastic. A lot of folks from the plant get involved with preparing for and volunteering to set up the location, set up a stage right beside the lake. This year we had roughly 2,500 people on the lawn. We've had larger numbers than that in the past, and then we have dozens and dozens of boats that anchor offshore. And a great event. There's displays of different technology from Duke Energy. There's food trucks that are out there. We'll tell you about how we serve the community anytime you come to see us. So we're all set up to do that. And then as the lawn fills up, myself and my plant manager, Brent Bear, go up on stage and introduce the symphony. And the boats just keep coming. As soon as the music starts, it fills it. It's a great event.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
Yeah, we look forward to, we plan to do it the end of June this year again.
Pat, do you get to many of the symphonies out there?
I do. I love it. And, thank you. You also let us play in your backyard of McGuire for Big Day at the Lake.
I was going to bring that. Yeah, sure.
So I know that's a big one for you, Bill. But it's just so beautiful. That typically is usually the hottest day of the year. So, but those kids have a ball. And, to give up your grounds like that with the security, it's very important. Boy, we have a lot of fun with that as well.
I would be remiss if we didn't bring up the Energy Exploring, because that's a huge resource we have here. Share what is the Energy Exploring?
So, thank you for asking about it. So it's an education center where folks can come and learn about what we do. You can learn about Lake Norman. You can also learn about nuclear power, the benefits of it, and how we're designed and the like. It's open through, you met Stacy earlier today, or I think you've known Stacy for a while. Stacy runs the facility, and by appointment, you can bring in tour groups and the like. Open
a lot of
Tuesdays
schools.
And Thursdays, tons of schools and Boy Scout organizations and the like that come through. We also use it as a facility to interact with the community. We from time to time will host like a consortium of realtors from around Lake Norman or different community agencies that want to come in and use the facility, the auditorium. We'll talk some about McGuire, and then we'll go to other topics associated with the lake or the community.
I know I only have a couple of minutes left.
Sure.
Going into the winter, do you have any kind of tips that you can give folks to keep their power bills lower?
Sure, I'd love to. So dukeenergy.com. If you go there and then follow energy efficiency, there are tips on there for how folks can save energy. Big thing is programmable thermostats. If you set a program and you set the times to be more efficient when you don't need the heat as much, maybe you're under the covers at night or the like. And some of those, there are programs where those can interact with your power provider, like us at Duke Energy, if you choose to do that. The other thing is Duke Energy has a program that's available for home energy assessments, and you can access that through the website as well. And the company will come out and there is an assessment of the home that will give you tips on how to tighten up your insulation and tighten up the air gaps around your windows. And there's kits that they do and the like. So lots of tips. But my mom would say, put a sweater on.
Put a sweater on. Well, the mission of Duke Energy is to provide reliable and affordable energy. And you do that. Sometimes we don't think about when we go inside the house and we flip on that switch. It's there. And when it's not there, we expect it to be there momentarily. So, again, thank you for the job that you and your organization do. It's exciting to have you here today.
It's
Pat,
a pleasure.
The Lake Norman Kiwanis, you're right. I am a proud member of the Kiwanis, been a proud member since 2001. I am so excited about what you guys are doing for Thanksgiving, and I thank you and Jeff. If it's Wednesday afternoon, we're talking about our Towns on Town Talk at WSIC. We're going to see you next week. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
The new 105.9, 100.7 WSIC, Statesville, W290DK, Mooresville, Lake Norman, North Charlotte.